Hello and welcome to Spectrum Projection, a media review podcast where we analyse characters who may fit into the autism spectrum. I'm Hannah, an actually autistic person with a master's in literature, focusing on the analysis of disability in fiction and in memoir.
And I'm Tilda, and I have the internet. If you ever want to see it again, donate £1 million to charity of your choice.
Trigger warnings in the description. Hey.
Hiya.
Hey, it's so cold.
It's so fucking cold.
I'm lucky I'm not wearing gloves at this point, but it's so fucking cold in England right now.
Yeah.
It's ridiculous.
And I keep complaining about this, but this is the first time I complain about it on the podcast, so it doesn't count. British people don't build proper houses.
Nope.
Every single British house I've ever been in has been fucking so cold all the time. And all the showers suck, and all the taps suck. You build shit houses.
I mean, we build shit societies as well, so, you know, what can we do? But
Every time I say it, I have to paraphrase. I hate Sweden, because all countries are shit, and Sweden is no exception. But at least we fucking have real showers that are, like, made for people to be able to use them, where you can set the temperature right without having to, like, fiddle back and forth between scalding hot and freezing cold. Why do your taps even have the option of releasing, like, boiling water to begin with? What's the point of that?
I was going to correct your pronunciation of scalding, but I decided not to because you were in the middle of a zone, so I didn't want to interrupt it.
Scalding?
Scalding.
What did I say?
You said scalding.
Oh.
It's scalding. I can't do this to you on a podcast because people will call me, like, a racist or whatever because English is your second language and people will genuinely...
Yeah, it's pretty fucked up that you would do that to me.
Stop! I don't want to be cancelled! Honestly, I'm just going to start out cancelled and work my way back. That's how Catholics do it, so... Oh, man. Speaking of cancelled, you've probably seen the title of this episode and you're immediately going, I don't know. We know. There's an elephant in the room we've got to sort of address. We're going to be covering a British comedy, which is extremely, I guess, iconic in current culture. There's so many bits of this show, The IT Crowd, which have become... just long-standing inside jokes for British people, and I imagine non-British people, but in Britain it is a big sensation.
I feel like a lot of those GIFs, got big on Tumblr, and now there's a generation of nerds that have all those references, like, on standby.
Mm-hmm. But my point is, if you don't know why we're talking about there's a bit of an elephant in the room, this show was created by, and both the episodes we're talking about today were written and directed by, Graham Linehan. I don't really care enough about him to look up how to pronounce his name. He's a horrific transphobe. Don't interact with him. Don't engage with his Twitter. Just block him. He's the absolute worst. Trans people are doing nothing wrong by existing, and he's a dick. But yeah.
I don't want to talk anymore about him because he doesn't deserve any attention.
Yeah, sorry. We're just not going to address it. But there are plenty of good trans charities that you can look into if you want to try and, like, do something against his kind of shitty rhetoric. Don't just post stuff like fuck that guy, do something.
Yeah.
So we're starting with that thing. We're not going to talk about him. Just know he wrote and directed both these episodes, and we will move on because I'd like to immediately forget who he is, just like the general British culture did when he stopped writing things like 10 years ago. So, it's a bad time in Britain for trans people, and honestly it sucks. But
yeah, we're so sorry if you are a person who has to go through that. It is absolutely awful.
Like, for us, we only have to deal with the whole thing of, like, oh, this show I liked is written by someone who sucks, but, like, it's so much worse. Like, if you like the IT Crowd, steal it. Channel 4 doesn't care anymore.
Hatsune Miku wrote it.
That whole thing. But yeah, it's still a show I really, really like. I do think that a huge part of it has not aged well.
Yeah.
But
some parts have aged incredibly well, and a lot of it is still extremely funny.
I will always
later.
I always treasure the show for introducing the country at large to Richard Ayoade, who plays the character we're talking about today, Morris Moss. He is great. Check out all of his work. His travel show is fantastic. It's so funny. Every time he's been on the Big Fat Quiz of the Year, I genuinely lose my mind.
He's so funny.
He's the funniest guy. He does a lot of voice acting as well. He's been in a lot of he's in the newest series of Disenchanted, which is that Matt Groening fantasy show.
Huh.
It's a spoiler, but he's good in it. He's a really talented voice actor, and he's extremely recognizable.
He was in the most recent, is it Disney or Pixar or both?
Oh, who even knows anymore? But Soul. He was in Soul. He was really good in that as well. But you'll be able to recognize the voice once you hear him once. It's a very distinct voice.
Yeah.
But you might be wondering, if you don't know what the IT Crowd is, it's a sitcom about an IT department in a company. What does the company do? Doesn't really matter.
Nobody knows. That's kind of a running joke.
It's a very British comedy. I will say that. They tried to make an American version that still had Richard Ayoade in it, but replaced everyone else.
It's such a surreal experience watching that pilot, because it's like I'm being fucking gaslit. It's like, no, what are you talking about? This is how it always was. Ross was always played by this... Roy
was always played by...
this American dude who isn't Irish.
Who is not... It's bad. Don't watch the American pilot. It is literally... They didn't even write new material. They just reshot the same pilot as they did in the UK, which makes you wonder what the fucking point was. Is it just because the Irish accent was too hard to interpret?
And the guy who plays Roy doesn't even have luscious lips, so what's the fucking point?
Chris O'Dowd is the one that we're talking about. He's great as well in this.
I'm just... When one time I was watching it and I noticed that he has a very cute mouth, and now I can't unnotice it. I'm sorry, okay?
And also I want to give a shout out to Catherine Parkinson, who plays Jen. The whole main cast of those three, and also Noel Fielding, who plays Richmond.
Yep.
All great. So absolutely killer. The funniest performances. There's still so many things that I know word for word just because their performances were so excellent. Mm-hmm. We're actually talking about two of the big episodes that everyone says are classics from this show, which are The Dinner Party, which is Series 2, Episode 4, and then later we'll be talking about Are We Not Men, which is Series 3, Episode 2. Basically, Moss is somebody who works in this department. He is the most stereotypical nerd you can imagine, full-on pocket protector, tie, tucks his shirt into his trousers.
One of my favorite sort of character design choices is that Richard Ayoade is, I think he's mixed, so he's half Norwegian and half Black British. I don't actually know, but he has really gorgeous, dense, curly hair. But he has a side part, so it looks like it's basically an afro with a chunk taken out of it, because it's supposed to be a very sort of neat, stereotypically nerdy side part. But because of his hair texture, it's like a Pac-Man thing. It's hilarious. Yeah, it's really funny. And it's such a distinct look for that character. Yeah, it really is. And to be honest with this, I think there's gonna be a lot of sitcoms that we talk about that have this autistic nerdy stereotype. There's one in particular that I feel like is a bit of a obvious choice. But the reason that I like IT Crowd but I don't like Big Bang Theory is because I feel like IT Crowd, as much as they make jokes about Moss's behaviour, it's not so much isn't it funny that he's weird and we're just laughing at him. It feels like we're kind of laughing with him and the situations he's creating. He's never in any kind of situation where people are cruel to him for his behavior, or he's treated badly for the way he thinks and talks. People just kind of roll with it. Yeah, which makes a big difference. It feels like it's kind of difficult to put your finger on, but it feels like we are supposed to and relate to Moss more than we are supposed to or relate to Sheldon. Mm-hmm. He is ridiculous and oftentimes childish and naive, but it's I don't know, it doesn't feel mean-spirited the same way Big Bang Theory does all the time. Mm-hmm. I mean, if we, jump into the episode for The Dinner Party, it starts off with Jen introducing this boyfriend she's got, and she says that she's bagged and normal, because they apparently are all very weird. And she's saying about, how they're going to go to Paris, and she asks, I think she just says something oh, we're going to go to Paris next week, and Moss says, I've heard of it. He says, Paris. And she goes, oh, you've been? No. But I feel if I went, I would like it, or whatever, something like that. It's the very literal responses thing. It's not that he doesn't understand, it's that, he's going off a script of, here's the polite thing to say in response. Oh, when people say about Paris, you're supposed to go, Paris. So, what do you do after that? The whole thing is just, Jen also is a serial, just has serial disasters in dating, is her whole thing. She keeps dating guys who are lame.
or that the others find issues
weird
with.
or turn out to be crazy. I love the guy with anger issues who she accidentally takes to like a annoying child restaurant. Do you remember that?
Oh god, yeah, Messijo's.
Because Moss recommends it, and she doesn't realize that it's like for little kids.
Yeah, he pronounces it as Messijo's, and it's actually Messy Joe's.
Oh yeah. And this guy with anger issues is like about to blow a casket at this really noisy, obnoxious restaurant. But yeah, she has a lot of problems with dating and is constantly trying to get a relationship, and it always fails in comical ways.
Yeah.
This time it looks like she's got a normal guy who's really lovely and nice.
Well, normal by their standards. He is still, like, weirdly comedic. Like, they have a 20-minute story about the fact that they met over finding cheese.
Yeah.
And when he invites her to the dinner party, he does what I like to call a Riker, which is where he puts one foot way high up on a random surface, so he's, like, leaning with his, like, crotch first.
Oh, yeah, the Riker. The fuck? Okay, Star Trek, whatever. What the fuck is up with Riker? I know, like, why does he always put his foot up? Like, when it doesn't make sense at all. Like, there's always, anytime there's like a surface that he can put his foot up, like...
It makes him look shorter, because he's, like, way off balance.
It's so fucking distracting every time you watch Star Trek, and, like, every time he walks into a room, into a scene, and I'm like, oh, where's he gonna put his foot? I'm not listening to the dialogue, I'm not paying attention to the plot, I'm just waiting for Riker to put his dumb leg up somewhere.
I mean, this guy literally lampoons that whole thing, because he walks into the room like a purposeful stride and, like, stops to put his foot up on the edge of a couch, which is, like, way higher than a natural, like, leaning forward pose would allow.
Yeah, and it's supposed to be funny, but in Star Trek Next Generation, Riker does that constantly, and it's not supposed to be funny.
I don't even know if that's a meme that people pointed out in Star Trek, but, like...
It should be!
When we noticed it, we were like, oh god, he does it literally all the time.
Like, every single scene where there is a surface he could conceivably put his foot on, he will put his foot on it. It's fucking bizarre.
But basically, he comes in and he says, like, oh yeah, we're gonna try and do, like, a couple's dinner party. Not Riker, Jen's boyfriend.
Yes, yeah, sorry.
Jen's boyfriend, Peter. He comes in and says, oh yeah, all my bloke friends who said they were going to come can't make it anymore, so can you find some single men to bring with you? And, like, she turns to look at, like, Moss, Roy, and Richmond, who just lives in one of the cupboards and is a goth.
Or maybe a vampire?
It's never entirely clear. But she's like, oh god no, I know I just said we're friends, but I can't let you nut jobs into my house. So poor Moss is genuinely kind of confused by that. It's like, but you said we were friends like 2 seconds ago, and it was the most obvious fucking barefaced lie. Because she does not want to work in the IT department. She's kind of been shuffled off there and forgotten about, and she does not like working with them.
Yeah, again, it's a running joke that she's the head of the IT department, but she doesn't know anything about computers.
It's like, she literally says, like, oh, you're the kind of friends who I don't let into my house. Like, and then Moss just goes, sort of like not your friends at all then. It's like that bluntness. It's because, like, the bluntness is at Jen's expense. That's the thing. I think, like, a lot of the time when people, like, kind of twist that, like, autistic habit of being really direct, they always try and make it into that's embarrassing for them, as opposed to embarrassing the person who's clearly being two-faced or shitty.
And you just had it laid out in front of them like that, yeah.
But, like, they're all planning to come to this dinner party, and she's terrified because they are all basement-dwelling weirdos. So she's determined to try and get them to act at least somewhat normal to meet all these girlfriends of hers who are all single.
Yeah.
They're all great in this episode as well.
Oh my god, yes, we'll get to it. But as there's the knock on, she has all of them come over early just so she can, coach them on how to behave. And there's a bit where she asks all of them what they want to drink, and they are all being super difficult about it. And Moss is like, a white Russian, and, like, out of nowhere.
It's a weird running joke that he drinks milk all the time. It's not like a thing you focus on, but, like, this, every time you see a scene where everyone else has got alcohol, Moss has milk. I don't know why that makes me laugh so much.
I think it's so funny that he, like, in these contexts where you're supposed to have an alcoholic drink, and he just, without fail, always has a glass of milk. And then there's the one episode where...
The final countdown.
Yeah, where... If you don't know what countdown is, just look it up. But he goes to, like, this bar that's specifically for people who are good at countdown, and in that again, I feel like, again, we're supposed to laugh with Moss, not at him. In that context where they're in that bar for uber nerds, and his friend Roy tries to order alcohol, they laugh at him, because they're like, that's not how you do. Like, they kind of point out that
all this shit is arbitrary.
Yeah.
And, like, people just have their own rules, and, like, what if they are fine with following those rules, why the fuck does it matter?
So in that context, Moss is the normal one for drinking milk.
I mean, we're going to get sidetracked with our episodes of this
Yeah.
show a lot. Just because, like I said, almost every episode of the show is incredibly iconic and has got, like, such a lastability in our minds that I literally can quote massive amounts of this show offhand.
And Moss is, you know, one of the three central characters, and basically everything he does, I think, is ripe for this kind of analyzation.
Like, plus, I will say that Moss and Roy are genuinely really close friends, and there's never really any scenes of them being mean to each other, like, mean. Like, sometimes they'll have miscommunications or whatever, but in a lot of stuff like Big Bang Theory, you kind of wonder why the fuck they're friends, because they're constantly just mean to each other.
Yeah.
It's just cruel. Like, in this one, they do, like, it's a really small moment before they go to a dinner party, but they have a little no-look low five when they're pretending they can't hear Jen when she's having to invite them. So it's just, like, a little cute little, like, they're in sync thing.
Yeah.
I will say I did love when they get to the dinner party and Jen's like, oh, you can't sit down yet. You don't sit down until everyone's here. And Moss goes, why not? I'm tired. And he also asks, can I go to the toilet like he's at school? And then he comes back really quick and has to, like, immediately announce, I washed my hands, before even anyone can question whether he washed his hands or not. It's like that very scripted, people know what to expect people to ask, but they don't necessarily wait for them to actually ask it. So...
It should be noted that it's, again, running joke that Moss has a quite overbearing mum.
Mm-hmm.
So you get the sense that a lot of these behaviors is like things that he's picked up from her. Like, she definitely asks him if he washed his hands every single time he comes back from the bathroom.
I mean, I will say if that's my one, like, criticism, and it's not a thing that I think is specific to Moss, I think it's true for a lot of these kind of nerdy roles. It's like, there is a little element of, like, infantilization.
Yeah, I was going to say
like,
that.
Of making them seem like children. But, like, that directness is a very common thing in children, and I think... with this, Moss does know what he's talking about. Like, at one point they're saying, like, okay, when you do small talk, don't talk about computer stuff like memory or RAM. And he just laughs really fake and says, but memory is RAM. Like, he knows what he's talking about. And it's just that awkwardness. But if you have issues with infantilization, unfortunately, it's kind of prevalent in a lot of adaptations that have this kind of thing. This is followed by... possibly the thing about this episode that we love the most.
One of the most iconic moments in the entire show, to be honest.
Look normal. Look more normal.
So there's a knock on the door with all the other guests arrive, and Jen turns to her, you know, not friends, and tells them, look normal. And they all pose really weirdly, and she goes, more normal. And they start, like, leaning even weirder. And
just, like, collapsing into themselves normal. To try and pose more normally.
And, yeah, it's... I feel like if you have only seen one moment from the IT crowd, it's probably that one.
Yeah, it's pretty fucking great. That or This Box is the Internet.
Yeah.
That's pretty great.
And I feel like I feel like, at least to me, that moment feels very relatable.
Yes.
We're not supposed to laugh at them. We're supposed to laugh with them, because I feel like we've all been...
Yeah.
Not all of us, but all of us who are nerds and socially awkward or neuroatypical have been in that situation.
So they invite in the other girls to this dinner party. There's 3 of them. I unfortunately only have Margaret's name because she's the one who gets paired up with Moss. And Margaret, they warn Moss, is recently divorced and a bit, you know, all over the place when she's drunk.
Yeah. And then we have, I forget what her name is, but the girl who gets paired with Richmond, who is... very, I don't have any lines, but she does these things where she's like, oh, social interaction, look at us talking. And
that's literally all of her lines, is just her saying stuff like that.
Like pointing out what they're doing in that way where you're trying to make it less awkward by pointing out how awkward it is, but you're making it even more awkward.
She does a lot of flapping with her hands as well, which we both kind of went, yeah, I'm getting that sense of the spectrum from her as well, but it's like... for her, it's just her trying to break the tension, whereas Moss isn't even aware there is tension.
Yeah.
He's with Margaret, and she's really drunk. She's also an extremely well-known British actress. She was also in Miranda, and she's really funny.
She is so funny.
But, like, when she's staring at Moss and trying to flirt with him because she's drunk, he's just like, I'm trying to eat my dinner, because she keeps leaning into him and, like, trying to, like, pet him or whatever.
I think touching his thigh is the implication.
Yeah. Stop it, I'm trying to eat my dinner. Oh, God, and everyone there is terrible at this dinner party. Like, I'm not going to go into Roy's plotline much, because it skews me out.
Yeah, it's pretty skeevy and not funny.
I don't know how to feel about Roy's character now, because I don't know how much the writer who sucks, who we won't name, like, I don't know how much of it is supposed to be, like, semi-relatable. Like, yeah, he gets shit on, and yeah, he's a horrible person, but, like, in this case, he's been paired up with someone who was recently, a model, who was recently in a car crash and has had reconstructive surgery and still has all the bandages on.
And he's trying to, quote-unquote, subtly figure out, basically, how fucked up her face is, if she's still hot under all the bandages. And again, it's unclear if we're supposed to laugh at him or relate to him. I get the feeling that we're supposed to relate to him in a lot of these, trying to get women escapades he goes on. And I'm sorry, I don't enjoy it. I don't like him.
No, I mean, I love the actor, and I think the big reason why I can still come back to these scenes and not just have to skip them completely, like with some of the scenes from these kind of shows, is the fact that the actor is so funny and is so clearly playing it as he's a piece of shit loser who's not gonna win.
Yeah.
Like, there's never any aspect of that where it's like, oh yeah, he's gonna make it out and win this. Like, in this whole episode, he's got zero fucking shot. He just keeps going with it, though, so that can be a bit agonizing.
The very end where he walks her back to her apartment and realizes that she has 5 PlayStations or whatever, and he is trying to flirt with her. Like, it's so obvious that he is the shithead there, so it's like I don't think we're supposed to feel sorry for him when she rejects him, because, like, how can you construe that as an okay thing to do, to try to get with someone just because they have?
I mean, she
cool
does
things.
say, she says she thinks she can do better than him, and then he just points at her bandaged face and says,
"Hello."
It's like, no. But going back to the actual dinner party, Richmond and his date are getting on very weirdly. Like, she's still doing the whole nervous, can't really address how awkward everything is, and he says, I can see the outline of your skull when you laugh. Just go straight to that.
And she gets the look in her eyes, like, a very good piece of acting, but it's like, oh. It's just so fucking funny.
Meanwhile, Jen and Peter are trying to keep the whole thing normal, and Jen actually has to take Moss to one side and say, like, look, I'm sorry about your, like, partner for this. I know Margaret's a lot. Just, like, try and remember she's recently divorced. And he goes, yes, I can see that. She's very divorceable.
I'm not even married to her, and I want to divorce her.
It's like, you're not married to her, Moss. You don't have to think about divorcing her. It's like, he just goes, I suppose not.
Like, he's already, like, he entered into the brain space of being married to her.
And then they just, like, do some, like, I guess montagey stuff of, like, stuff that they say through the dinner party. And, like, Jen's code for you need to stop talking is to cough really hard.
So we cut into the scene, and she's just, like, coughing up a storm, and Peter, her boyfriend, is, like, next to her, like, are you okay? Do you need water? And she's just staring at Moss going,
and then Moss says,
I said, do you think you would die if you drank your own wee?
And it goes from that scene to another scene.
But I want to point out, because in that moment, Jen is, like, desperately trying to get him to stop talking, but everyone else is, like, entertaining this line of thought without, like, any, like, hesitation. So Jen is kind of overreacting in this, because the conversation is fine. People are, like, talking about it.
It's definitely weird, but it's, like, the fun kind of dinner party weird. Like, it's better than doing genuine small talk the entire time.
Yeah.
Like, this also leads to another conversation where somebody asks for Peter, Jen's boyfriend's email, and he says it's Peterphile. And Moss just...
File Peter, I think.
File Peter. It's like, oh yes, my name's Peterphile. And then Moss just looks up from what he's doing and very blankly says, who's a pedophile?
And there's a whole gag about, like, Jen insisting that his name does not sound like pedophile, and everyone else being like, it kind of does.
And then, like, after a long pause, Moss adds, in America they say pedophile.
So maybe you should move to America.
So he's trying to help. He doesn't see how it's awkward. He's just saying, like, this is clearly the same. I don't know why we're pretending it's not. Like, again, that directness is kind of used to lampoon the fact that, like, Jen shouldn't be letting that bother her if she really likes this guy, but she clearly is bothered by it. Like, she didn't even realise that was a connection until they pointed it out.
And now she's trying to pretend like it isn't there.
Yeah, it's pretty... it's pretty funny. And then, like, it's kind of a weird episode because in terms of, like, describing what happens, it's hard because it's basically like a little series of skits with the same characters.
And also kind of like a bottle episode.
Yeah, Moss is having an argument with Margaret at the table about how she's embarrassing him. Like, they're an old married couple.
Like, he's gone tipsy at this point, and they're, like, talking like they're married. And he goes like, "You are drunk, you're embarrassing yourself." And she's like, "Oh, why are you always like this? You're always trying to ruin my fun."
You've changed. We've all changed, Margaret.
We've all changed, Moscow. And he smokes.
He smokes a cigarette, which is so not his character.
Yeah, again, it's so funny in this episode where this character who's normally quite, innocent and what is it? Not nervy, but what's the word?
I guess agitated.
Agitated is like talking like he's like a gritty man's man.
Like he's a husband from the 70s who hates his wife. It's so weird. It's such a great performance. Also, unrelated to this, Richmond and the nervous girl are fucking basically on the dining room table. Like they're just making out. And it's so weird. It's so bizarre. They all leave for the night and Jen's like, oh god, that was a total fucking failure.
Moss walks his date home, and again he talks about her like they are married, and says to Jen, "I'm sorry about her.
I'm gonna put her to bed." She always gets like this when she drinks. It's like he only met her today. But yeah, there's not really any more scenes with Moss. The dinner party, Peter insists the dinner party went fine, that everyone had a good time, and Jen's just like, oh yeah, I guess, yeah. One day, don't worry, this time next week, it'll just be me and you in Paris. Jen, I've forgotten her last names. And she's like, yeah, that's right, Peterphile. And she just has this look on her face.
Like, ugh. And so the ending bit, they're at the airport, waiting for their flight.
Jen and Peter, yeah.
Yeah, and there's like a call over the speaker where it's like, can a Peterphile come to gate whatever? And he really says, oh no, we're at the wrong gate. And he stands up and starts screaming in the middle of the airport, I'm Peterphile!
I'm the Peterphile!
I'm Peterphile! And he starts running, and we cut to this, a mother and her child, like wrapping her arms around the child, and Jen is like, it's Peterphile. It doesn't sound anything like
and then it just smash cuts to her catching a taxi outside the airport with the plane leaving.
Taxi!
And then the post-credit scene is Moss and Roy working in the office with really loud music, and Jen comes in and turns it off, and you can hear Richmond
in the other room,
and the girl, and they're having sex, and you can hear going, oh, I'm having an orgasm.
No, this is me having an orgasm.
And it's so fucking funny.
It's all weirdly wholesome. I'm like, good for them.
Yeah, like it's such a weird episode because like with a lot of these like shows with sitcoms that do like secondhand embarrassment stuff, I can deal with it in this show because the people who get like have a bad outcome, like break up with the boyfriend or don't get with the model, are people who are being shitty and don't deserve those outcomes and deserve to be embarrassed. Like it's kind of the same thing that happens in the other episode we're going to talk about, which is from the next series, which is Are We Not Men? There's going to be some gender stuff in this, guys. I'm sorry, it's unavoidable, but the way this show talks about gender is dumb. Basically, it starts off with Moss walking over to Roy really annoyed, like, is this your stapler, Roy? No, it's not. And he just takes it back and starts, like, opening it up and then counting the individual staples in, like, groups of 7.
Like, trying to, how many did you take? And he's like, 7 or 8. And he's like, I've told you to tell me how many you take.
It's like, what do you even need to know? I just do. You know I need to know. And it's like, this is something we haven't really talked about yet in the podcast, but like, it's quite common for OCD and autism to occur at the same time in people because autism really requires routine to rely on, and sometimes that requirement for routine comes out in like wanting to control other aspects, like having obsessive compulsive behavior, so wanting to know the exact number of things in a place and feeling that things aren't okay unless it's like a specific number or in a specific spot. Like it's quite common, and like in this case I think the joke is like kind of at the expense of people who have obsessive behavior, but like I think it's strange because it doesn't feel as hurtful as I was expecting for that kind of joke. Like the fact that he says I just do, you know I need to know, is a point that I've never seen anyone ever raise when they make fun of these kind of behaviors. Like, it's just, they need to know. That's it. It's like, doesn't feel like a joke to me. That's just a statement at that point.
Yeah.
But basically, this starts at the beginning to show that Moss is very, like, specific and nerdy and awkward and not good at social stuff. And then the postman walks in, and the postman says, did you see that ludicrous display last night? And then Moss responds in a completely, like, Cockney accent.
Like, blokey bloke tone.
Like, what was wrong to thinking cinema on so early? It's like, it goes through this whole conversation, like...
The problem with Arsenal is that they always try to walk it in.
So they're really gruff, like really talking in like footballisms. Again, this is a very British thing in this one. If you don't know British football stuff, it might come across as complete gibberish, which I think adds to the joke, to be honest. But yeah, Moss goes through that whole interaction without really looking at the guy or engaging with him.
Not blinking at all.
Yeah, not really engaging with him directly or anything. It's like he's just having this conversation while still counting staples.
No, I don't think he's counting it because he's like doing it like as though it's natural, which is why it's so weird because he switches onto this completely different track and it's like talking like this, like he does this all the time. Like this is how he always talks.
Chris O'Dowd's reactions in this scene fucking sell it because like the postman leaves and Roy's just sitting there like, what was that? Are we not going to address that was fucking weird as shit? What was that? Did you have a stroke? What's going on? And basically Moss says, oh yes, I use this website. It's like to know football things because Roy literally says, how do you know football things? Those were football things. You don't know football things. And Moss shows him a website called Bluffball, which literally just gives you a readout of a conversation.
I love anytime they show the computer screens in this show because it's such a fucking blast from the past. It's like, early 2000s internet.
Oh god, yeah.
Where it's like,
chunky
it was
windows.
like just when the internet started to get usable, but it was still so tacky.
It really was. But like basically he shows this website, which I fucking want. I probably will not be the only person who said this upon watching this episode, but it's literally a thing that produces a script of what you need to say. But the thing is, it produces both sides of the script, and it predicts what the other person is going to say, so you know what to say in response.
Yeah.
Like, literally, both halves of this conversation are on the website. It's not just giving him prompts on what to say, it's also saying, oh, and then they'll say this, and then you say that, and then they say this.
Like, the joke is a little bit how these kind of sport conversations are pretty predictable. Like,
yeah.
Because it's all fucking the same shit all the time.
Yeah, it's like, it's predictable because it's just like a safe convo. Like, this is the thing I don't get about a lot of these like manly men type criticisms of people who try and like make adaptations for autism. It's like, your biggest source of small talk involves no thought at all. Like, it's literally a scripted back and forth and then you both say goodbye and no one gains or loses anything from this interaction.
And all the matches are like on the schedule. Like, I don't know anything about football. Is it like every Saturday or something?
It depends on what league, hon. I used to be into sport.
Hannah used to be a jock.
Hannah didn't used to be a jock. Hannah used to do a lot of sport and Hannah then was crippled by having a terrible body.
Hannah played Crazy Frisbee.
Ultimate Frisbee. And I was captain, but that's not relevant to our discussion about football.
How can you keep insisting that you weren't a jock when you have...
I was captain on teams because I was the quiet one. They thought it would help me get out of my shell. Joke's on them. I almost broke my hip playing rounders to try and get out of being my fucking captain.
And now you have a fucked up hip.
I mean, that was unrelated to the fucked up hip. That was after that had already started.
Wait, that was unrelated? Oh, no, yeah. Did you fuck your hip up getting run over by a car?
No, and I've never been run over by a car. I've only been hit by cars 3 or 4 times. None of it was serious. I've never had to go to a hospital or a doctor about it. Maybe I should have, but that's not the point.
You definitely shouldn't have apologized to the person who ran you over.
No, nobody ran me over, and both times it was my fault for being in a horrible depression daze and not looking where I'm going.
Can you tell? This is a very scripted conversation, isn't it? Like,
yeah.
I keep fucking... This is like with 5 of our running gags in the same conversation.
Like, sometimes when we want to talk to each other, but we don't want to have the energy to actually come up with new conversation material, we'll just have this conversation again. And I kind of fucking love it.
No, it is kind of funny, like how anytime it's like slightly relevant, I will either call Crazy Frisbee Ultimate Frisbee Crazy Frisbee, or I will bring up the fact that Hannah got run over 5 times.
I got hit by a car. People in the comments should make it very clear getting hit by a car and getting run over are really distinct problems. They're not the same.
And this is how the conversation goes every time.
I
And
know.
it's kind of comforting.
But yeah, this is the thing. Like, this is something that, like, if you have someone in your life who's autistic that you want to try and get to know better, a big thing that I struggled with when I was younger and trying to, like, connect with my younger brother is that sometimes he will just want to have the same conversation with the same answer and response over and over and over again because it's what he knows. And it can get frustrating because you're like, oh, I've already said this like 6 times today. But it's like, that's just how they interact. It's a thing you kind of have to learn to have patience with because even though it feels repetitive, it's just how they communicate.
Yeah.
So, you know.
Or like how they can get the social interaction that people need in a comfortable way.
Yeah, it's true. It's a lot less scary for my brother to talk to me and like tell me the same setup and joke from like something he likes and have us talk about like why it's funny or why it's not funny than to try and get him to talk about something he doesn't really care about. So, you know, it's important. But like this is a massive side tangent from this. We're going to the subplot, which isn't relevant to our thing at all, but it's fucking funny because Jen's dating a magician.
Oh yeah, she's going on a date and she's walking out and Roy goes, "Oh, who are you going with? The guy who looks like a magician." And she's like, "He doesn't look like a magician." And then Moss walks in and Roy's like, "Oh, Jen's going on a date with that guy, whatever his name is."
Michael.
and Moss immediately goes, "Ah, Michael the Magnificent." And so it's a bit where she goes, "She does not look like a magician." Smash cut to her on the date, and then we see this guy, and he so looks like a magician.
He looks like Darren Brown. He looks exactly like Darren Brown.
Like, you've never seen a man who looks more like a magician in your entire life. It's amazing casting.
And plus the guy, like, does so many little flourishes to the way he moves and stuff.
Yeah,
like,
he does, like, the weird, you know, kind of
presentation.
DreamWorks eyebrow thing.
He does the weird presentation thing, like he picks up something at dinner and he starts, like
flourishing
around
like a salt
it.
shaker, and he's like, "Have you seen these salt shakers? They're just so
We're both gesticulating, like this isn't an audio medium.
Yeah, like, he's like gesticulating like you would in a magic show, and it's very funny. But anyway.
But yeah, that's a subplot. It's not really relevant to this. They go to the pub.
Moss and Roy do.
Moss and Roy, because Roy wants to try and hang out with football guys. Like, he wants to try and make, like, proper blokey friends. Moss has also got a glass of milk again. I notice this in every scene and I can't stop noticing because it's just so fucking funny, and like it just reminds me of my brother because he can only drink apple juice or milk. So anytime we go to a pub, everyone else has like a beer or like orange juice or whatever, and it's like, "One glass of milk with my plate of chips, please." It's just very familiar to me. It kind of makes me homesick a bit. But they're both sitting there in the pub, and Roy basically, I did put, unfortunately my notes got distracted by the fact that Moss is wearing a fucking fit in this scene. I would wear his outfit in this scene.
In this outfit?
It's like,
in this scene rather.
It's like tweed stuff. It's like very extremely nerdy. It's something I could see you wearing as well.
I love how watching all of these old shows, and it's supposed to be a character who's terribly dressed, but the way sort of like alternative fashion has changed over the years, and mainstream fashion as well. A lot of this stuff is just, oh, that's just straight up a fit. I saw a TikTok. I am on TikTok now. It's embarrassing, but I saw a TikTok where someone was pointing out how Ugly Betty from
Ugly Betty.
I don't know if it's a show or a movie. I've never seen it.
It's a show. I've seen it.
But pointing out like, a lot of her clothing are straight up just fits now.
Yeah,
like
it really is. But basically, Moss is dressed in a very nerdy outfit that I would absolutely fucking wear. But basically, Roy starts chatting to this bloke about the football using the exact same conversation that Moss used earlier. And Moss comes over and tries to get Roy out of it. And instead, they both get dragged into a conversation with a load of football blokes. And they're sitting in the corner of this pub on this, like, curved bench. And you can just see Moss shaking like a leaf the entire time, milk splashing over the edges of his glass, and it's so subtle because it's clearly not the focus of the scene. Like, it's just it's Roy and Moss both looking so out of their depth with the football conversation that everyone around them is having, because like they only have one script for football stuff. They don't really know what to say next, so like they're both sitting there like just kind of getting on with it or whatever. And Moss tries to get them out of it, and he's like, "Roy, can I have a natter with you? It's about a bird." And they both get up and say, excuse me.
Yeah, he goes from the blokey bloke voice, and then as he's like trying to get out of the sea, he's like, "Excuse me." Switching back to his normal way of talking, which is like quite nasally and nerdy. It's very funny. And
Roy basically says, "Oh, come on, you're being a bit of a sport, but we can hang out with proper men. Maybe we can be proper men for once." The thing about proper men, I mean, it feels like the joke is kind of like being proper men is pointless, and the proper men they find to hang out with kind of suck. But like, I don't know, it's a weird fixation of this show.
Yeah. And Moss goes, basically, "We're flying too close to the sun. This was never meant to be this way. We're not football man. We're not football men.
I'm weird. I like being weird." He's like, he's extremely like comfortable in the fact that he's clearly like odd.
Yeah.
And I want to have that fucking energy.
I know,
I wish I could. Meanwhile, I still don't admit to people I watch Star Trek, and you've heard this podcast. You know how much I talk about Star Trek. But
Hannah will get. Yeah,
You
we
can
can cut
put-
this out if you.
You
don't
can
want
put
to
me
call
on
you
blast
out.
because I think it's
Hannah will
important.
get embarrassed going into like the nerd and comic book shop buying things. She's like, oh no, they will know I like nerd stuff. And I'm like, Hannah, this shop is nothing but manga and comic book and like little nerdy models. They know, and they are too, probably.
Yeah, it's a thing. Like, this is a thing that, like, there's never really a good point to bring this up because I've never seen anything ever, like, address this because it's stupid. It's a stupid thing my brain does, but it's a thing I know happens to a lot of women with autism where it's, like, it's to do with rejection-sensitive dysphoria, where, like, being rejected feels fucking devastating. This is a thing that happens in ADHD as well, where, like, mild rejection or constructive criticism feels like, oh god, it's all over. So whenever I've talked about something I like and people have turned around and said, oh, I don't think that's that good, or oh, no, I never really thought that I could check that out or whatever, I immediately go, oh god, they'll fucking hate me, my taste is terrible. So no one can ever know what I like in case they say something bad about it and I feel horribly depressed in relation to that thing forever. It's a bad way to live. It's a bad way to enjoy media, but it's a thing I'm trying to get better at. So I do tell people things I like now.
Yeah.
So you can.
And my contribution is that I try to bully Hannah into like talking to people about things she likes. Well, not like, but I'm trying to.
It's more bullying me into actually engaging with things I like because it's not even
Yeah.
talking. Tilda can attest. I really love the McElroy podcast, The Adventure Zone. And to the point where I was like, it was my whole life during the original Balance arc. I know basically every episode off by heart. I know tons of facts about all the characters. I would die for Angus MacDonald. This is just a random fact.
Of course you would.
But my point is, like, there was a whole year where I didn't listen to it because I liked it too much. Like, I just felt way too overwhelmed by how happy it made me, so I just didn't listen to it. And you were like, why don't you just start with the new arc? Like, ignore all the stuff you've missed. Just start with the new thing they're doing. Just do that. And I did that, and I enjoyed it. What a shocker.
Oh, I'm glad my advice actually worked. I didn't know that.
Yeah, I mean, it was sucks because I really liked it, and it's like, but I can't because it makes me happy. I don't know. Autism is weird, and being raised in a culture that is mean to people who care about shit. Fuck cringe culture, by the way. This is a big part of why it got this bad for me. Like what you want to like. Cringe is dead. Fucking whatever. This is a huge side tangent.
Where were we?
We were at the point where they were like in the pub and Roy said, it's just for one night or whatever. And then there's a smash cut.
Okay, they got involved. Yeah, exactly. Oh, sorry.
Yeah, there's a smash cut and they end up at a football match.
Yeah.
This is another bit that I think has gone semi-viral of Moss sitting at this football match in full West Ham colours. I don't know why him and Roy got those, but they did. And then Moss is just giving a running commentary, completely monotone. It's like, he's kicked the ball over there. It's over there now.
Now he has the ball.
Is he
what
going?
will he do?
He
Kick
hates it so much. He literally says that's an interesting development at one point when they're kicking it around. And you pointed out how weird it was how Roy talked about like, oh yeah, I couldn't say no. He bought the tickets in the pub on his phone.
Oh yeah, they specifically point out that he bought them on his phone because this show came out in the era when doing that sort of stuff on your phone was kind of a new high-tech thing and not just how most people do things all the time.
Oh, this is the point where Moss says, we're not real men. I like being weird. Weird's all I've got. That and my sweet style.
It's like... and it's supposed to be a joke, but you know what? He's not wrong.
I would wear anything Moss wears as an outfit if I had any confidence. Like, literally I would. It's cute. They look cute. Don't fucking...
I love a pair of high-waisted brown trousers. Unironically, I love them on myself and I love them on other people.
Basically, these football blokes try and invite them to stay at the match and do stuff with them later. And Moss says, I've got to go. So, oh, come on, stay for the rest of the match. It's like, nah, it's about a bird. She's not much to look at, but she's got a beautiful heart.
It's so good. And so he's leaving. He's like, are you, the match is not over. And he's like, oh no, they're having a laugh today. And like, but they're winning. They're having a laugh.
And that's the other thing I think really fits with this whole like autistic read. It's just like using bits of a script that you know are supposed to work in this kind of context, but don't really fit. You just kind of like, please God, just take it. Leave me alone.
When you're trying to like shove a wrinkled bill into like a
vending machine, it's like,
please, God, take it.
Take this crumb of conversation, please. Basically, Roy goes out with the guys, and he comes back the next morning. Moss has his neck in a brace, and Roy is dying from a hangover. And he literally says, "What is wrong with the English? You people drink like you don't want to live." And it's true.
Yeah.
God, I'm wondering how many times we're going to say Ross instead of Roy. It's going to be high.
I mean, you know that's the ship name, which makes it even funnier. Moss, Roy, Ross.
But yeah, the reason Moss has his neck in a brace is because he's got Cockney neck from speaking too much Cockney. Oh man. Basically Roy talks about like how he was doing some gambling with these guys and he like lost a huge amount of money, which was actually pretty good going for him because he usually loses even more money. But they let him off of it.
Yeah, they were super cool about it. Such lovely, cool blokes. And he's going on about like how, you know, men are how normal men, quote unquote, are great and cool and normal and not weird at all. And he's feeling really good about himself that he's been able to have this, you know, quote unquote normal interaction with a bunch of guys.
Yeah, there is all the stuff with Jen's boyfriend. She breaks up with him because he looks too much like a magician, and he's like, what can I do to help? It's like,
would it help if I became an actual magician? It's just like, you'd have to be a really good magician.
I mean, like, you'd have to be, like, professional shows 3 times a week magician. Oh, man. But yeah, that's not relevant to this. Roy goes to their lockup of the blokey blokes to talk about, like, the money and everything, and they ask him to do them a favour. And instead of paying the money, he's like, you, sir, are a gentleman. Meanwhile, in the background,
you see his 2 friends, like, grabbing a bunch of bags and putting balaclavas over their heads. And Roy doesn't see any of this. But he's like, oh, no, yeah, it's just a little drive. Who cares, right? That's no big deal.
So they go on a drive to I think it's a gas station.
Yeah.
And Roy's sitting in the car. He calls up Moss, who's still counting staples. And he says, like, oh my god, there's a robbery here. Because he notices them holding up the shop and nobody told him it was a robbery.
Yeah.
So he calls the police. After Moss yells I love his delivery, call the police! So
he calls the police and he's like, yep, there's a robbery at this bank and so. Oh, no, they're coming out now. Oh, they're running in this direction. They're coming closer. Oh, and then, obviously, they come to, like, they jump into the car and, like, drive! And
I used to live in this area, so this bit was nostalgia for me.
He squeaks out, like, yeah, okay! Like, he's got a really funny, like, falsetto when he's nervous voice.
Yeah, his cry voice is great.
So funny.
But they drive through where I used to live when I was younger, so nostalgia for me.
Is this not going to dox you?
I mean, they filmed in a couple of different places, so we're good. But basically, they cry through an area near where I used to live. And, well, he'd cry through the area. They drive through the area, and they try and drive into a truck, but Roy's
like he doesn't he's panicking, he's not like gassing it enough to get up this quite steep ramp. And that's just, you don't drive, so you don't know, but that is such a relatable thing where like you're trying to finesse something, but you need to like give it more gas, and like there's a tight space. This happens to me. Okay, side tangent. I'm taking my glasses off because I'm having an emotional breakdown. But my parents' house, the garage used to have this bump at the bottom of it because the gravel got like worn down. So there was this massive, like almost 10-centimeter bump at the entrance of the garage. So you had to like press the gas enough to get into the garage, but not so much that you crash into like all the trash that had been, you know, accumulating in the garage. And it was also like really tight and narrow because, again, on both sides, more garbage, and you had to finesse it so that you got in close enough, so in the middle, so everyone could get out of their doors. But yeah, so this was funny to me because it's like, oh, I've been there.
Relatable anxiety.
They
get inside the truck, they close the doors. We don't know how they close the doors. They actually make fun of that later.
Yeah.
Because, like...
But we just see, like, it's, like, filmed, like, so we see the top of the truck as the car or the door slams shut, but we don't see who closes them.
They're all sitting in the dark inside this big truck.
Listening into the sirens going past.
You just hear Roy start crying really gently, and then just start doing the same script they had at the beginning. It's like, did you see that Chris display last night?
And no one is answering.
He's just doing the entire conversation by himself in tears. But they all get out, and there's like a big fight between them about like who called the cops and everything, and Roy's just like awkwardly trying to like slide out of there, and
they're like, it can't be him because he didn't even know about the robbery until it happened. And he's like, yeah, it couldn't be me because I never knew about the robbery.
And then Moss like knocks the door, and he's like,
because he Because in their phone conversation, Roy mentioned that, oh yeah, you should come down to this place, this cool hangout place. They hang out in a
Lock up in the middle of nowhere, yeah.
Because they're so cool. So Moss shows up like, hiya guys!
Tell me about the big robbery then. And then he sees these massive stacks of money.
Did you call the police like you said you would? And then
he sees all these massive stacks of money on the table. It's like, oh, I wonder how much there is. And he grabs a stack and he just starts counting it like he did with the staples.
Meanwhile, as you know, the tension in this situation is ramped up massively because now they know that
one of them swears at Moss and he says, "My ears are not a toilet," which is a very like infantilized, raised by an overbearing mother kind of thing that I can see him repeating.
Yeah.
And while all the other guys are just arguing and stuff, Roy literally yoinks Moss out of there, like just reaches in and grabs his shoulder and just yoink.
And he goes, "I have to see how much there is."
No, you don't. Yes, I do. I just have to know. And they both run out into the street, and there's police coming. And they're like, "Oh God, we need to hide. We need to hide."
And Moss slams Roy up against it's like a garage entrance thing and starts making out with him like in a really weird, awkward way.
Like it's clearly supposed to be really intense, but it's also like Roy is way taller than he is, and also doesn't know what's happening.
And they're both nerds, so they don't know how to kiss. And the joke is supposed to be that haha, two guys are making out, but because these are like good actors who are like actually funny, the comedy for me comes from what a weird, awkward kiss this is.
Especially since they immediately is followed up by, "Why didn't we just hide behind those bins there?" And it just snaps to a slightly zoomed out shot of them right next to two giant bins they could have just ducked behind as easily.
And then another round of police cars come past, and Moss again presses Roy up against the door.
They do use a gay slur here. Yeah, I do want to like give you a heads up.
The cop drives past and yells gay slurs at them, which I guess is it a joke if it's just accurate?
Yeah.
Because cops
also
suck.
like the entire joke is this kiss scene goes on for a really
because there are like
long time.
So many police cars driving
there's
past.
4 people in this robbery gang. There's at least 7 fucking police cars. Like it's ridiculous how many there are. And then they obviously do it again, and the episode ends on that front. Jen and the magician guy break up because he's a really shit magician. Like he's really fucking bad at it. It's over. We can't do this. And the very last joke of the episode is Moss sitting there
in his chair.
His chair. It's like, back to work, and he just gets out a stack of money he stole from the stolen stack of money and starts counting it again. Good stuff. Good stuff. But yeah, I think both these episodes hold up, but there are definitely aspects of them that haven't aged very well.
Yeah.
Like,
and like it doesn't help that you can't really give the benefit of the doubt when you know who wrote this, because it's like, oh, maybe this isn't supposed to be funny just because it's two guys making out, but then you know what kind of people wrote it and you're like, oh no, the joke is definitely supposed to be haha gay funny.
And also like the whole "are we not men, manly men, they're real men, we're not real men" stuff is just bad in the angles that the writer seems to be fucking playing around in now.
Yeah.
Like at one time it just seemed to be like you should be whoever you want to be, but now I don't know. Yeah. I honestly don't. And there's a whole thing of like death of the author or whatever, but like for real, if supporting his work makes you uncomfortable, don't support his work. Find a way to watch the show without having any money go towards it, because trust me, the other actors from that show are doing just fine.
Yeah.
It's a good show, and I would recommend it if
you can stomach that some of the aspects haven't aged well.
There's definitely an episode you should skip.
Yep.
I don't remember which one it is.
I'm gonna edit it in here. It's season 3, episode 4, The Speech.
But yeah, skip that one. It's openly transphobic. Like, it's where this whole guy's shitty vendetta started because people said, hey, this kind of sucks, and he got offended and immediately doubled down and then tripled down and then just kept digging down until he reached the fucking pits of hell. Like, just fucking say, was a slut at the times, won't do it again, man. It's not that hard. Jesus. But overall, rating as a comedy, I think we both say good.
I really love the IT Crowd, despite its flaws. It's one of the shows that has made me laugh the hardest, most consistently. There are so many bits in it that are near and dear to my heart.
True. I especially love it for introducing me to a lot of the people in this. Like, Noel Fielding's other body of comedy is all really good. The Mighty Boosh is incredible. You should catch that if you haven't seen it. Chris O'Dowd's in a lot of really funny comedic stuff. He's really funny on The Last Leg. where he just got really fucking drunk at a New Year's party.
Oh my god, that's so cute! It's so funny.
Look that up. Look up Chris O'Dowd on the last leg drunk, because it's the best.
I'm gonna watch that clip as soon as we stop recording.
And obviously, Richard Ayoade has done a ton of amazing stuff, both comedy and non-fiction, and he's done some directing, and he's done voice acting. It's just everything. All of his work is great. And Catherine Parkinson's been in a lot of other stuff, but I don't really follow her career as closely because, you know, women don't tend to get held up that much in comedy. Lame. But overall, as an autistic angle, I would say this one is pretty good. If you want to watch a sitcom that has an autistic coded character, this is one of the few ones where I can say I don't feel like the jokes are being made at their expense so much. Like, there's definitely parts where, like, it's kind of up to the individual to decide whether you feel like this is, like, laughing at him for being a certain way or behaving a certain way. But I feel like it's just, he has a level of charm and a level of, like...
relatability.
Yeah, that's the key thing, the relatability. Like, it's not that, like, look how weird this other person is. It's like, oh no, I get where Moss is coming from.
Yeah.
I think it's a good experience. At the very least, it's something that, like, reminds me of a lot of my own experiences with autism. Like, the milk thing. It's just like oh yeah, that's James. That's James right there. So, overall, good, which is a nice one to have.
Yeah. Good, but with some flecks of shit, I guess.
Oh god, yeah. Like, it is a real thing of, like, if you are concerned about that content, there are a lot of more informed people who know a lot more about trans issues who can tell you, like, hey, skip this one, or this has themes of that. It's really important that you, like, put yourself first in this thing. Like, do not watch stuff that might make you uncomfortable. But, yeah.
Unless you're into that.
Unless you're into that, I don't get it. Like, I can't watch Rick and Morty. I know that's on the list of characters I could talk about, but, like...
maybe if we run out of stuff.
We won't run out of stuff anytime soon. We've got quite a good list. We'll see what we're going to do next week. We still don't know yet, but I think that's time for us to take it out.
Yeah.
This was Spectrum Projection with your hosts Hannah and Tilda. Our theme music is Somewhere Longing by Tilda. Send us suggestions for future topics to spectrumprojection@gmail.com or to our Twitter and Facebook pages at SpecProjPodcast. Thank you.
Bye.